sense of order, because that there was this cause that they could begin to identify or measure or obtain. So in today's science, and this is just a theory, but there is a new concept that comes out that's called quantum theory, quantum physics, and they're trying to describe this same thing. And yet they don't know exactly what it is, where it comes from, or how it is that it happens, but they're able to do some scientific investigation that suggests that somewhere, somehow, some way, there is an interconnectedness, that we are all interconnected into the one. Now, I think that's science of mind, and that's the philosophy that we teach, but science, physical science, is trying to prove this in a way that they can measure or they can contain or they can observe. Now, they sort of twist their own theory and concept when they come out and they say, and the one thing about quantum physics is that whatever this is, and they're not sure whether it's a particle or a wave because it can be both, and it all depends upon the observer. So who's the thinker behind the thinking that's observing what's being observed, and whatever you're coming from, whatever you're thinking of, is what it is, whether it's a wave or a particle. Really gets kind of confusing. That's kind of like, so I'm thinking, good Lord, when they start reading this passage, they're going to just, put this book away and not go back to it again. But if you look at the bigger concept in the chapter that it comes out of, and this is where it becomes important, the chapter is on immortality. So you have to sort of look at it in the big picture. You have to begin to see what is the topic at which Ernest Holmes is trying to speak about. And he's trying to bring forth this idea that we are already immortal. We are spiritual beings. And he says in a little bit further as we get into another page or three down the road, he says that the spiral of life is upward. So in 1926, this was the phrasing that Ernest Holmes was using in his message. The spiral of life is upward. Evolution is forever moving forward. It cannot go back. We had a convention for our organization just recently in New Orleans, and we've elected a new spiritual leader. And on his closing statement at the end of the conference, one of the most powerful things that he said that I walked away with is that after we had gone through several years of trying to redefine who we are as a organization, and we had gone through a lot of changes and a lot of shifting and a lot of things happening, and his words were, and this is where we are today, and we cannot afford to go backwards. We can no longer have the luxury of going back. We are here. The movement is forward and in an upward spiral. We might see the event, we might see the situation, we might see or hear or experience the event in a way that we have had the experience before, but because we're in an upward spiral, we're at a new level of consciousness. You are not the same person that you were when you walked in the door this morning. You have been changed. And you have been changed for good. And you have been changed in a way that you are moving forward and upward into a higher consciousness, and you are transforming the very world in which you live. And it does not stop, because we are immortal and we are eternal. So begin to think about that for a minute. The body, within the body, within the body, infinitely, is forever moving forward in a consciousness that is bringing it to a new level of understanding. As we stand here or sit here today, it is difficult for us in our human mind to comprehend infinity or eternality. What would that be like? What would it be like to know everything instantly, right here, right now? Well, then it would just be over. But it's eternal, so it can't be over. Because in this way that quantum theory is trying to speak to us, is that we have this option as observers that where we are thinking from, we are creating the next experience, the next event. So often I ask you, what are you thinking of? Where is your mind? Where are your thoughts? Because if that's where you are thinking, that's what you are creating more of. It's why we want to encourage people to get out of the story. I even suggest often, stop telling the story, because every time you tell it, you are affirming that that is your truth. I heard recently someone say that they really got that, and so now they're writing a new story. Isn't that great? I think it's wonderful. You know, I look at some of the brilliant minds that have come before. Thomas Jefferson decided that the story that he was reading in the Bible was not his truth, so he wrote his own. Why not? We get to write our own story. If you're reading Scripture, and I read many Scriptures of many faiths, of many traditions, because I want to have an understanding as much as I can as to how that developed, how that has come along, because it has been an influence in the life of who I am, because of my family, my upbringing, my education, my culture, wherever I lived. All of that has been created by different traditions and faiths and scriptures. And so there's something there that I want to understand. This is why so many of us look into our ancestry. We want to know, where we were coming from in order to have a better idea of where it is that I am today and how I'm going to be tomorrow. What is the direction that I want to go from here? And yet every time I read a story that has already been published, that has already been printed, that has already been out there, I have to somehow stop and take into my mind, where was this being written from? Where was Ernest Holmes at the time that he was writing this book? He was trying to draw from the intelligence, from the brilliance, from the great minds of his day, in order to bring some principle, some truth, some idea as to what he believed. And out of that we have the science of mind. Now I'm very clear about this. Science of mind is not a religion. It is a philosophy. And a philosophy is just accumulation of some opinions, some ideas, some thoughts about what we believe. And we actually have a document that says what we believe. And in there it says, we believe that we are immortal. We believe that we are eternal. And yet it requires you to prove it for you and for nobody else. You need to do the work